Afghanistan. The CIA begins to gather intelligence about the day-to-day movements of al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. The analysts are working up an ambush plan. They want to capture but not kill bin Laden. The goal is to bring him to trial for a series of crimes. It's a list that includes the training of militiamen who shot down 2 American helicopters and killed 18 Army Rangers in Somalia. The 1993 attack became known as Black Hawk Down. But bin Laden has begun to take evasive action. He moves frequently around Afghanistan, inspecting his many terror training camps. Then he returns to a place called Tarnak Farms, where he lives with 3 of his 4 wives and several of his children. In some ways, his routine is like that of a businessman with a daily commute.
He'd grab his lunchbox in the morning, go to Kandahar and see how his businesses were doing and talk to the Taliban leaders, and then come home at night.
In the spring of 1998, the CIA plan to snatch bin Laden moves forward with the tacit approval of the White House. May 20th, the CIA runs a full rehearsal with its local allies, Afghan militiamen opposed to bin Laden and the Taliban. The plan is for the militiamen to capture bin Laden and take him to a desert landing zone. From there, the al-Qaeda leader would be flown out of the country. That very same week, inside a tent in a remote compound in southern Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden tapes an interview with ABC News correspondent John Miller. With the tape rolling, he declares war on the United States.
We do not differentiate between those dressed in military uniforms and civilians. They're all targets in this fatwa.
Before agreeing to the interview, bin Laden insisted on knowing what questions he'll be asked and whether the program would be broadcast in prime time.
It was his coming out party as a terrorist leader. He needed to introduce himself to the United States through an American news medium.
Bin Laden's message is crystal clear. He demands that U.S. troops leave Saudi Arabia, where they have been stationed since the 1991 Gulf War. If not, he threatens more attacks like the 1993 truck bombing of the World Trade Center, masterminded by Pakistani Ramzi Youssef.
We anticipate a black future for America. If the present injustice continues, it will inevitably move the battle to American soil, just as Ramzi Youssef and others have done.
Bin Laden said many things that at the time, I have to say, sounded a little hyperbolic and unlikely. He declared war on the United States. Yeah, you and what army?
At the CIA office in Islamabad, Pakistan, agents are awaiting word from Washington to go ahead with the plan to seize bin Laden. Then, at the last minute, a satellite photo of bin Laden's compound reveals a problem.
There's a story that there was a swing set there. And they said, well, look, there's children there, and we're going to, children will die probably if there's a gunfight, and there inevitably will be one, because there's no way they're going to get bin Laden, and get him out in silence.
American authorities are not prepared to risk that civilians, including children, might be killed. The U.S. scrubs the mission. Hamburg, Germany, spring 1998. Mohammed Atta has just returned to graduate school after taking a 3-month unscheduled break. He applies for a new passport, even though his old one has not yet expired. He may be trying to cleanse his travel record of a trip to al-Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan. Here in Wilhelmsburg, south of Hamburg, Atta rents a 2-room, 3rd-floor walk-up. He pays the $250 a month rent, but many other Arab men also come and go. The blinds are always shut. Their downstairs neighbors never hear a radio or television, only stockinged footsteps and muffled voices of the men above. Two of these men will work under Atta's command to carry out the 9/11 attacks. One is Ramzi bin al-Shibh, a 26-year-old whom Atta met at Al-Quds, one of the most radical mosques in Germany.
I mean, people were frightened of what they heard. Parents warned their children not to go there. It has this sort of this very harsh, weighty message, but it also has this embrace. And the combination of the two is powerful.
At the mosque, Atta's cold and often rude behavior is balanced by bin al-Shibh's good humor and playfulness. He is seen as the peacemaker at Al-Quds, where the two friends lecture to young men on the Quran. Another young member of the mosque is this man, 20-year-old Marwan el-Shehi. Shehi grew up in a rural part of the United Arab Emirates, where his father was a prayer leader at the neighborhood mosque. He is a born storyteller. Shehi's engaging personality, as well as his knowledge of Islam and the Quran, draw the others toward him. The three men gather to pray. It is Shehi who leads Atta and bin al-Shibh to embrace the radical Islamic interpretation of jihad, a process that ultimately convinces them to become martyrs in a suicide mission.
Shehi knows that jihad is the answer. Shehi seemed to arrive at a time and with a force of personality that was, I think, crucial. He might have been the thing that was needed to take away the fear and the mystery of it, I think.
A fourth man joins the group later that year. At the Al-Quds Mosque, bin al-Shibh befriends this man, Ziad Jarrah, a 23-year-old Lebanese engineering student. Jarrah is enrolled in an aircraft technology course here at the University of Applied Sciences. It's 10 miles from where Muhammad Atta is studying urban planning. In the 1980s, Jarrah attended private Christian schools back home in Beirut, Lebanon, and enjoyed the trappings of a westernized middle-class existence. Handsome and fun-loving, he squired girlfriends around in his father's Mercedes. In Germany, Jarrah maintains a relationship with an attractive dental student named Aysel Senguin, the daughter of Turkish immigrants. They are close, despite their different personalities. She is outgoing and independent, while he becomes increasingly private and quiet. Aysel and Jarrah frequently quarrel, separate, and then reconcile.
Aysel is hectoring him. She doesn't know where he is. She knew it wasn't another woman, that it was the mosque, it was the boys from the mosque.
Ain't no guarantees out there. If I don't catch a fish, the bottom line is my family goes without.
Bluefin tuna fishing is the absolute challenge.
I sold a 900-pounder for 15 grand. Payday, baby.
The competition is fierce. Everybody wants to be the #1 guy.
This season, we'll see who knows how to catch fish.
Pesca no limite. Batalha no Atlântico. Segunda às 9h20 no National Geographic.
Só deve haver para aqui algum asterisco escondido.
Não temos truques. O Movimento Nacional de Poupança Intermarché dá-lhe preços baixos todos os dias e aos fins de semana descontos bombásticos de 50% em cartão. Actimel Danone 6 vezes 100 gramas com 50% em cartão. Óleo alimentar VG 1 litro com 50% em cartão. Intermarché, juntos pelo melhor e mais barato.
Nairobi, Kenya, August 7th, 1998. Osama bin Laden makes good on his threats. It's been less than 2 months since his televised declaration of war on the U.S. A bomb-laden truck explodes outside the American embassy, tearing the facade off the building. 5 minutes later, a second blast nearly levels the U.S. Embassy in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The twin attacks kill more than 200 people, including 12 Americans. Many of the victims are Muslims. Two weeks later, President Clinton orders retaliation.
Today, I ordered our armed forces to strike at terrorist-related facilities in Afghanistan and Sudan.
The U.S. unleashes scores of Tomahawk cruise missiles against targets in Sudan and Afghanistan, including a pharmaceutical plant in Khartoum, Sudan, that was allegedly producing chemicals used to make nerve gas. Some Americans, however, view the military strikes as a way for the president to divert attention from another crisis, a sex scandal involving Clinton and a White House intern named Monica Lewinsky. The Afghanistan-Pakistan border, fall 1998. In the streets, the African embassy bombings raise bin Laden's stature.
I went back to Afghanistan and Pakistan again in 1998. And the people were starting to look like him. And then bin Laden t-shirts are starting to be out there. And then one of my Pashtun friends says, you got to understand how many kids born this year were named Osama.
Bin Laden now turns his attention to other operations, including a suicide assault on an American warship and an even more ambitious project, what he calls the Planes Operation. It's a plan to use commercial airliners to strike civilian targets in America. Washington, D.C., December 4th, 1998. Bill Clinton's presidential daily brief includes a warning. Al-Qaeda is planning to hijack a jetliner. The purpose? To force the release of the blind sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman and Ramzi Youssef. Both men are serving life terms in U.S. prisons. The blind sheikh for a plot to blow up New York bridges and tunnels. Ramzi Youssef for the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. To address the warning, White House counterterrorism officials place New York airports under maximum security. There are no attacks. On January 31st, 1999, the alert is lifted. Clinton now authorizes lethal force in the pursuit of bin Laden. In Hamburg, bin Laden's declaration of war on the U.S. has a profound effect on Mohammed Atta and his group of radical friends. Within a year, all 4 men traveled to bin Laden's headquarters in Kandahar, Afghanistan. Kandahar, Afghanistan, February 1999. Osama bin Laden is on vacation, enjoying a few weeks of falcon hunting in the desert. The CIA now has President Clinton's approval to take bin Laden, dead or alive. Afghan fighters working with the U.S. set up tracking devices that can pinpoint targets for destruction. The U.S. Navy prepares for a Tomahawk cruise missile strike. All that's needed is bin Laden's exact location.
Questions from Washington. What tent is bin Laden in? When is he in the tent? Where does he go to the bathroom? Is there a tent that's a mosque there so that, used as a mosque, so we don't want to hit that?
A satellite photo then reveals that bin Laden is hunting with a crown prince from the United Arab Emirates, an oil-rich nation that has good relations with the U.S. Once again, the operation has become complicated. CIA and military commanders now estimate as many as 200 to 300 civilian casualties.
Against William Jefferson Clinton.
Adding to the confusion, President Clinton has been impeached on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. The U.S. Senate is set to vote within days on whether to remove him from office.
All persons are commanded to keep silent.
Despite all that, Clinton and his advisors must focus on another dilemma. Should they risk killing civilians and damaging relations with a friendly Arab nation in order to kill a terrorist few Americans have heard of? Once again, U.S. authorities decide to cancel military action against bin Laden.
They decided not to shoot because it might have killed the Arab prince. Well, the world is lousy with Arab princes. And, you know, Sister Mary used to say, you're known by the company you keep.
Bin Laden leaves the compound 2 days later.
And he hereby is acquitted of the charges in the said articles.
That same day, February 12, 1999, the Senate acquits President Clinton. Bin Laden now moves ahead with the planes operation. It's part of his strategy to provoke a U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. An American attack he predicts would unite the forces of jihad against the Great Satan. A replay of the war with the Soviets. From his cave headquarters in Tora Bora, bin Laden had revealed his grand scheme to the editor of a London-based Arabic newspaper.
He told me that. He said, it is extremely difficult to go and fight the Americans on their own turf. If I succeed to bring them in and fight them in my home ground, I will succeed. I will defeat them.
To execute the planes operation, bin Laden needs trustworthy men who accept radical Islam's glorification of death. Men willing to martyr themselves for the glory of Allah. Spring 1999. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or KSM as he is known to U.S. intelligence, meets with Osama bin Laden at an al-Qaeda camp near Kandahar, Afghanistan. The two men have never been close, but bin Laden's growing commitment to the planes operation convinces KSM to abandon his freelance status and formally join al-Qaeda. They discussed potential targets, including the White House, the Capitol Building, the Pentagon, and the World Trade Center. That fall, 4 young disciples of radical Islam make their way from Hamburg, Germany, to an al-Qaeda terror training camp in southeastern Afghanistan. The men fill out application forms. They provide details about their education, work skills, and language abilities.
People who could travel without much question were valued. People who could speak English, who had lived in the West, were valued.
The last question, would you be willing to participate in a jihad operation? Then, they are invited to bin Laden's personal residence at the compound. It's a rare honor for al-Qaeda recruits. Bin Laden asks the men if they are willing to carry out a jihad mission in the United States. Bin al-Shib and Shehi had long since embraced the idea of martyrdom. But Atta has been considering returning to Egypt to care for his ailing mother, and Jarrah has just married his Turkish girlfriend. Nevertheless, all 4 accept taking an oath of fealty to bin Laden.
They all knew before they left Kandahar that they were going to die for Allah. How? They don't know. Where? They don't know.
They just didn't know the details exactly, so that if one or more of them were apprehended, they wouldn't be able to give up the full details of the operation.
Bin Laden designates Mohammed Atta, the oldest and most educated of the group, as the leader. Atta is obedient and obsessive in his attention to detail. Mohammed Atta and Ramzi bin al-Shib cross the border from Afghanistan and make their way to Karachi, Pakistan. There, they meet with KSM for further training. KSM will be the mission's paymaster and day-to-day supervisor. After years of discussion, the idea of flying hijacked jetliners into buildings in America now has a budget, a leader, and a plan. Hamburg, Germany, spring 2000. 4 young men chosen by bin Laden for a suicide mission in America have reported their passports stolen. They receive new ones with no record of their trips to Afghanistan. With the clean documents, 3 of them, Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, and Ziad Jarrah, apply for and receive U.S. visas. But the U.S. denies a visa to the 4th man, Ramzi bin al-Shib, because he's viewed as someone who may try to immigrate to America. Osama bin Laden searches his Afghan training camps for a replacement. He picks this man, Hani Hanjour, a 29-year-old Saudi who is already licensed in the U.S. as a commercial pilot. Hanjour will now return to the U.S. and train on jumbo jet simulators. Newark, New Jersey, May 29, 2000. Marwan al-Shehi, the Hamburg cell member who knows the most about the Quran, passes through U.S. immigration here at Newark Airport. 5 days later, ringleader Mohammed Atta also arrives through Newark. Ziad Jarrah, the easygoing Beirut native with a Turkish wife, arrives on June 27th. He flies to Venice, Florida, where he begins taking lessons here at the Florida Flight Training Center.
He showed initiative and paid attention to detail. He was sharp. And I thought he had good potential to become a good airline pilot.
Within a few weeks, Atta and Shehi also wind up in Venice. They sign up for classes here at Huffman Aviation. They rent this pink bungalow in Nokomis, just minutes away from their flight school.
Their landlord was most impressed because even in the summertime, they didn't turn the air conditioner on.
By mid-August, Jarrah, Atta, and Shehi all pass their flight tests. The FAA grants them licenses as private pilots. But they lack the skills to navigate a large jetliner, so they enroll in advanced training on simulators which replicate the controls of a commercial aircraft. The men have never actually flown a jumbo jet, but by the end of 2000, they have enough skills to guide one into a target. 70 miles away at this Air Force base in Tampa, members of a highly classified U.S. military intelligence program meet. The team, codenamed Able Danger, uses supercomputers to track al-Qaeda operations around the globe. Intelligence data reportedly uncovers a link between Atta, Shehi, 2 other hijackers, and a terror cell operating in Brooklyn, New York. But military lawyers do not let the Able Danger team pass the information along to the FBI. Since the men hold valid U.S. visas, they are considered off-limits to military intelligence. Kandahar, Afghanistan. Bin Laden is busy searching his training camps for more volunteers. He's decided to strike at least 4 prominent targets in the U.S. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who is managing the plot for bin Laden, decides that he needs teams of at least 5 hijackers to take over each airplane. Besides a pilot, the team includes so-called muscle hijackers to overpower the crew and passengers.
Most of them were drawn from, according to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he told me, what is called Department of Martyrs in Kandahar at the time. They are very simple thinking kind of people.
These men receive special training for their sole responsibility, storming the cockpit seizing control of the aircraft. Some make these martyrdom videos. After their deaths, these messages will be combined with footage of the devastation they have created and find their way into Al-Qaeda recruitment tapes.
We'll send a bloodied message to Americans by attacking them in the heartland.
I am writing this with my full conscience, and I am writing this with expectation of the end.
Protect and defend the Constitution.
January 20th, 2001. George W. Bush is sworn in as President of the United States.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
In America, after the hotly contested presidential race, life returns to normal. The Baltimore Ravens win the Super Bowl. Gladiator captures Best Picture at the 73rd Academy Awards. And 4 radical Muslims are completing their pilot's training. In the months to come, the men will turn their attention from learning how to gain control of commercial airliners to the task of breaching airport security. Spring 2001. Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, Ziad Jarrah, and Hani Hanjour, the 4 men who have trained to crash hijacked planes into American targets, are living in plain sight in the U.S. Most of the hijackers live apart and move around the country separately to avoid attracting attention. They rent cars, return them, and rent others. Atta and Shehi traveled to Georgia and Virginia before returning to Florida. Hanjour settles in Paterson, New Jersey, with muscle hijacker Nawaf al-Hazmi. They change apartments every month, mostly furnished rooms in seedy neighborhoods on the fringes of suburbia. One of them, Ziad Jarrah, lives not on an Al-Qaeda stipend, but on $2,000 a month which his parents send him from Beirut. He drives around in a used 1990 red Mitsubishi and makes at least 5 flights to Europe to visit his Turkish wife, Aysel. There is constant friction between Jarrah and the leader of the group, Mohammed Atta. The more easygoing Jarrah chafes under Atta's stern authority. Atta begins to suspect that Jarrah will back out of the mission.
He certainly, on a relative scale of all of the operatives, would have been the most likely one to withdraw and perhaps even spill the beans.
Las Vegas, summer 2001. Atta, Shehi, and Jarrah all make trips to America's Sin City. Records show that Atta pays cash and stays at this Econo-Lodge on a dreary part of the Strip. No one sees the men gamble, but Atta and Jarrah access the web at a local internet cafe. For months, the men move freely about the country. They use their real names on hotel ledgers, driver's licenses, and plane tickets.
They were among us. You know, they lived among us for over a year before they attacked us, and they did not stick out. It's not like they had 2 heads or horns or anything like that where you could immediately identify them as people who were coming to kill us.
By this point in the summer of 2001, American intelligence agencies are detecting increased communication, what they call chatter, from terrorist organizations. For example, they learn that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is, quote, interested in sending terrorists to the United States. But they have been looking for KSM for almost 5 years and still don't know where to find him. They also intercept at least 33 communications indicating a possible imminent terrorist attack. One message says, unbelievable news coming in weeks. Another says, a big event. There will be a very, 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 very big uproar. the FAA briefs some of the nation's largest airports, including New Jersey's Newark, Washington Dulles, and Boston Logan. The briefings describe the increasing threats from bin Laden and the possibility of hijackings. Before the summer is over, the FAA will receive 52 specific warnings about bin Laden or Al-Qaeda. 5 mention hijacking. 2 indicate possible suicide attacks. Even as the chatter increases, the FAA's own undercover security experts, known as the Red Team, learn that airport procedures are unlikely to stop a potential hijacker. They find that they can easily get weapons past airport checkpoints.
Every area of security we tested was a gaping hole of security. None of it worked the way FAA advertised it. We literally got through security roughly 90% of the time with very little problem.
According to Red Team members, the FAA does not address the problem. Instead, they say, FAA officials suppress their findings and even prevent the teams from retesting airports that perform poorly. By early July, all 15 of the so-called muscle hijackers are in the U.S. Ringleader Mohammed Atta has personally greeted most of them as they arrive at the airports. The men are young, all under 30, but not physically imposing. What they lack in size, they make up for in blind loyalty to Al-Qaeda. They believe bin Laden when he assures them they will be rewarded in heaven for their sacrifice.
Humble people in the Arab world, receiving his message and sympathetic with him in a way or another. And that's why he managed to recruit those young chaps and send them to die as martyrs, as he called it.
The 4 pilots scout the flight paths to their targets in rented aircraft and as passengers on commercial airliners. They fly in first class, each aboard the same type of aircraft they plan to commandeer. Jarrah and Hanjour also rent small planes and fly the Hudson Corridor, a route that takes them at low levels past the World Trade Center towers. Costa Dorada, Spain, July 2001. Mohammed Atta travels to this seaside village where he cloisters with Ramzi bin al-Shibh. Bin al-Shibh, who was denied a U.S. visa, is now acting as bin Laden's messenger to the hijackers. At the meeting, he tells Atta that bin Laden wants to launch the attack immediately.
And Atta, at that time, according to bin al-Shibh, expressed some doubt about whether the White House would be as easily attacked as something like the Capitol, which is a much larger structure.
Atta says he needs to delay the operation for 5 or 6 weeks. He's worried that he doesn't have enough time to train the muscle hijackers. Atta also needs to organize 4 teams with separate itineraries into what he hopes will be a single cataclysmic event. But bin al-Shibh gives Atta a clear message. Bin Laden fears the U.S. might uncover the scheme. He wants the operation carried out as soon as possible. Phoenix, July 10th, 2001. At the local FBI office, Field Agent Ken Williams sends a memo to his superiors in Washington. He's seen a number of Middle Easterners with ties to radical Islam enroll in Arizona flight schools. Individuals of investigative interest who may be in a position to conduct terrorist activity in the future. The memo reaches FBI headquarters in Washington and the Bureau's counterterrorism unit in New York. The report doesn't reach the Bureau's upper echelons until after September 11th, and lower-level FBI staff does not act on the information.
Should we have stopped all counterterrorism investigations and taken and interviewed the
thousands of flight students in Phoenix. I mean, I don't know. We didn't have the resources or the personnel to do that.
Mohammed Atta books tickets with specific seat assignments on cross-country commercial flights out of Boston and Newark. The team leaders go from training their crews to rehearsing the precise steps necessary to take over a jetliner. Atta's plan is to smuggle simple weapons aboard the aircraft, including utility knives with small retractable blades. The hijackers sit in a carefully thought-out pattern. The muscle hijackers will be here in first class near the front of the cabin. The pilot hijacker will be a few rows back, and the last member of the team behind him. They refine the plan by studying routine in-flight operations. When the flight attendants begin coffee service, when the seatbelt sign is turned off, whether the cockpit doors are locked. The plan is for the men in front to storm the cockpit and kill the flight crew, allowing the pilot hijacker to take control. They will then slit the throat of at least one passenger or crew member and leave that person bleeding to death in the aisle. This, they hope, will neutralize any threat from the passengers. Crawford, Texas, August 6, 2001. President Bush is on vacation at his ranch, where he gets his daily briefing from the CIA. It's titled, Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S. The two-page memo states, FBI information indicates patterns of suspicious activity in this country, consistent with preparations for hijackings or other types of attacks. The White House believes there is no new threat information in the briefing to pursue. Eagan, Minnesota, August 13, 2001. Zacharias Moussaoui, a French national with ties to Al-Qaeda, arrives at the Pan Am International Flight Academy. He wants to practice flying on jumbo jet simulators, but flight instructors are suspicious that Moussaoui shows no interest in learning how to take off or land. They alert the FBI. 3 days later, federal agents arrest Moussaoui on immigration charges. He will remain in custody for the foreseeable future. Meanwhile, Mohammed Atta considers dates for the attack. In order to create maximum chaos in Washington, Atta wants to wait until Congress is back from its summer recess. August 29, 2001. As he will later tell a reporter, Ramzi bin al-Shibh is asleep at his home in Hamburg when he receives an early morning phone call. On the other end of the line, Mohammed Atta delivers a cryptic message, quote, 2 sticks, a dash, and a cake with a stick down.
The 2 sticks is the number 11, the dash is the dash, and the cake with the stick down is the number 9. And that was the 0 hour.
9/11, September 11th. Bin al-Shibh will later claim he personally relays the message to Osama bin Laden. His teams are now in place, ready to make their attack on America. September 2001. The 4 teams of hijackers make final preparations. They visit area gyms and use local libraries for access to the internet. On one occasion, an ATM surveillance camera captures this photograph of pilot Hani Hanjour and muscle hijacker Majed Mukhed during seemingly routine daily activities. They are tying up loose ends before executing a plan they hope will kill thousands of people and spark a global confrontation. As has become his custom, Osama bin Laden seems to be announcing his intentions. At the London headquarters of this Arabic newspaper, Al-Quds Al-Arabi, editors have received several warnings of an unprecedented strike against the U.S. The paper does not report the warnings, which arrive at the end of a summer filled with predictions of an impending attack. Intelligence officials work around the clock, trying to decipher chatter so dense it's now an avalanche of white noise. At the CIA, agents are anxious to pin down the threat.
My closest lieutenants in the counterterrorism center, they were deeply disturbed. You know, there's still a big attack out there. They're coming. They want to kill Americans, and we were scrambling to try and put some meat to this.
But some people in America seem to have better sources of information. Brooklyn, New York, September 6th. A freshman is studying a beginner's English text here at New Utrecht High School. But the boy, a recent Pakistani immigrant, is distracted by the Manhattan skyline visible out the classroom window. When the teacher asks what he's looking at, the boy points toward the World Trade Center. He says, "Do you see those two buildings? They won't be standing there next week." The teacher dismisses the comment. The FBI will later verify that this conversation took place. But agents do not determine how the boy could have known about the coming attacks. September 9th. Ziad Jarrah, who has been a constant cause of concern to Atta, may be having second thoughts. He calls his family and tells them that he'll attend a cousin's wedding in Lebanon on September 22nd. He says he has purchased a new suit for the occasion. At 12:05 a.m., Jarrah is driving 90 miles an hour when police here in Pikesville, Maryland stop him. It's a 65-mile-per-hour zone. He politely answers the officer's questions.
Still live in Springfield on Quicksilver Drive? Still live on Quicksilver Drive? Okay, I'll be right with you.
Jarrah then signs the $270 ticket and drives off.
Os ataques terroristas do 11 de setembro mudaram o mundo para sempre. 11 anos depois, o National Geographic revela novos segredos do dramático acontecimento que mudou tudo. Especial 11 de setembro, domingo às 10h30, no National Geographic.
September 10th.
This is 1010 Wins. You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Good morning. It's 73 degrees at 12 o'clock on this Monday, September 10th. I'm Brian Carey, and here...
A bright, cloudless day on the eastern seaboard. New Yorkers ready themselves for a mayoral primary. Several candidates vie for the opportunity to replace the outgoing mayor, Rudy Giuliani. At the White House, President Bush and Australia's Prime Minister John Howard greet reporters outside the Oval Office. The head of the FBI's counterterrorism office receives word that the Justice Department has rejected his requests to boost his budget. Portland, Maine, 5:43 p.m. Mohammed Atta, the Egyptian graduate student in charge of the plane's operation, and muscle hijacker Abdul Aziz Al-Omari check into this Comfort Inn. They get cash at this ATM and stop at this gas station. At the local Walmart, they purchase 2 utility knives like this. Atta's team is booked on American Flight 11 the next morning from Boston to Los Angeles. Sometime today, Ziad Jarrah writes a tender farewell letter to his wife, Iso.
He told her basically that he was about to enter paradise and that he hoped that she would be proud of him.
Boston. Pilot Marwan El-Shehi and 2 members of his team stay at this hotel. One of them calls an escort service and asks what it would cost to have a prostitute sent to one of their rooms. The $400 price tag is apparently too high for them. Muscle hijackers and brothers Hamza and Ahmed Al-Hamdi check into this day's hotel in the city's Brighton neighborhood. Hamza orders a pornographic movie on the in-house video system. Shehi's team holds 5 tickets on United's morning flight 175 from Boston to Los Angeles. Newark, New Jersey, September 11th, 12:05 a.m. Pilot Ziad Jarrah enters this airport Marriott. He pays $450 in cash for 2 non-smoking rooms. Jarrah and his team have 4 tickets for later this morning on United Flight 93 from Newark to San Francisco. Herndon, Virginia. Pilot Hani Hanjour is with his team in a hotel close to Washington Dulles Airport. They are booked on American Flight 77, a morning flight bound for Los Angeles. All 19 of the hijackers are now in their hotel rooms. Some have trained to fly huge jets. Others only to kill with a small blade. Some of the men read a set of instructions entitled Last Night. The handwritten document directs them to stand firm and inspect their weapons. In part, the letter says, "Know the plan well. Vow to accept death. Purify your heart and cleanse it of stains. Let your breast be filled with gladness. To God we shall return." 19 men go to bed, knowing that the next morning they will attempt to execute an attack based on their deeply held beliefs in radical Islam. It's a plan that grew from a casual conversation between childhood friends and was nurtured by Osama bin Laden. They will bring the jihad to America.